Welcome to the Cash Flow Chronicles, where we're redefining wealth and overcoming obstacles. Infinite banking, yeah, we control our cash. We put our money to work, so we know it's gonna last. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Cash Flow Chronicles. We appreciate you tuning in today. If this is your first time checking out the podcast, or you have yet to see our full infinite banking overview, please head on over to the website legacylifeandretirement.com. Right there on the front page, you'll be able to check out that overview. So give it a watch, get a better understanding of what we're discussing here today. I'll also link that at the end of the podcast just to make it easy on you. So today I am joined again by my part-time host, Liz, and we'll be discussing the next chapter of Nelson's famous book, Becoming Your Own Banker, aka the Bible of Banking. I need to get myself a Bible just so I can hold it up and show people. I'm excited to sit down and discuss this with you today, Liz, because I know we're going to be getting into the grocery store example, which, if I remember correctly, the first time that I read this book was definitely something that made sense to me. It was one of those relatable things where I'm like, okay, I'm following with this. This makes sense. But before we hop into all of that, how's everything going with you?
It's good to be here again. Things are great. Life is good.
Always good to hear.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm excited about our trip to Nashville that's coming up in a couple days. So excited to meet you
Yes.
and Amanda and your baby.
Yep. Yeah, very excited. Again, we live on completely opposite sides of the country, even though Liz lives where my wife and I used to live. We did not meet at that point in time. I would ask what bar you work at, but I don't want to put yourself out on blast in public. So we'll not do that this time. But it's starting to cool off here in Florida, outside of all the insane hurricane stuff that's going on. Everybody keeps asking if we're all right. Luckily, we're in lower Alabama portion of Florida, so we're good over here. But how's everything looking out there in Washington? I know it's probably getting cooler.
It is cooler. It's nice. It's just beautiful fall weather. I think the fall weather here is nice. We don't have any hurricanes, which is fantastic. That might be the only downfall over there in Florida.
Yeah, that's definitely true. That, and people can be a little crazy, but I do miss that about Washington, is the changing of the leaves and all that stuff. You get a lot of really beautiful colors out there. And in a place like Florida, where basically every day is summer.
I like that you know where Vancouver, Washington is, because I'll say Vancouver, Washington, and
people are like, I think she means Canada. You're like, I meant Washington.
Yeah, and then they're like,
nobody knows where Vancouver, Washington is. It's Portland, just the Washington side of Portland.
On the other side of that river there.
Yep. Great old, what is that? The Columbia River.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, if you guys are in the Pacific Northwest area, I know Ms. Liz is going to meet up with some people today in person. She likes to do a lot of her business in person, which a lot of us do because it's very personal stuff here. We're creating banking policies for you guys. So yeah, if you're in that Pacific Northwest area and you're looking for somebody to connect with in person, go ahead and reach out to Liz. We'll get you her information, her social, all that stuff at the end there. And yeah, she loves to meet people in person. All right, we're going to hop right into it. Last episode, we covered how infinite banking got started, just a little bit about Nelson's story and whatnot. And again, with this specific series of the podcast, we're going to be covering the book and just going through some stuff that we believe was really important, that stood out to us, that's going to help you better understand the information yourself as you read through it for the first or the second time. Liz and I were just discussing how many times we had read through the book, but our suggestion, once you become an infinite banker yourself, somebody that's using their policy, is you should probably read through this thing at least once, preferably twice a year. So once every 6 months, because I promise you there'll be some things in there that pop back out to you once you're actually utilizing your policy and being the banker, that you're like, man, this is what I meant. Or I had a question about that, and Nelson answers it right here. So super, super good information in here. But we are going to start today on page 14, and the chapter or the page is titled Imagination. And there's not a ton in this portion that I want to go over, but there is for sure a really good quote that I like at the top there by one of our favorites, because this man truly understood continuous compounding interest. There's a quote by Albert Einstein. It says, imagination is more important than knowledge. And I think that's actually, I'm going to ask you, Liz, what does that quote mean to you? Why do you think that's in this book?
I believe this quote is in this book because it highlights the importance of keeping an open mind and keeping your mind open to different analogies that he brings up in the book and how they relate to banking.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's just, again, it's rethinking your thinking. It's having an open mind. It's willing to view things in another light, however you want to describe it. I think Nelson, all he's doing is prepping you to say, hey, you're going to have to be a little bit different here. The reason that the common person isn't doing this, because the common person lacks imagination. They lack looking at things from a different viewpoint. So before you get into this, before I jump into the grocery store example, I want you to have an open mind about this, because people with an open mind tend to see things that others maybe couldn't see. So is there anything on that imagination page that you feel like you want to touch on before we hop into the famous grocery store example?
Yeah, I think he intentionally put this imagination page in right before the grocery store example.
Agreed.
The next line there says the infinite banking concept is an exercise in imagination, reason, logic, and prophecy. And I have that highlighted in my book and dropped down on the last paragraph, second to last paragraph. It's talking about this young boy who discovered the relationship between numbers that's fixed, and there's nothing that you could do to change it. And I think it highlights the importance that the concept is real and the details don't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's funny that in the very last paragraph, he mentions that he says, nevertheless, somewhere in the past, I have heard that a legislator in some state tried to get the mathematical term pi changed from 3.1416 to 3 because it was too complicated and cumbersome. Like he says that these demigods could not conceive that they were dealing with a fixed relationship that they could not change and had no authority over. Again, you don't want to get too much into the details and the weeds of what's going on here with numbers and all that stuff, but just understand that math and banking are often two different things. And so as you go through this process, we're going to show you a lot of things and you're going to want to tie just strictly math to that. And we're like, nope, it's not what we're talking about. We're talking about banking here. Like we use that example of the interest that a bank is paying out. You put your money into a bank, they give you, if you're lucky, 4%. They send your money out to a bunch of different people, loaning it out. And the example that we use in the presentation is, hey, they just made 20% off of all these things. You made 4%. How much more did they make than you? And the normal person would take 20% and they would minus 4% from it and say, oh, they made 16% more than me. When in all reality, the bank made 500%. So again, it's just a different way of thinking. You're thinking math, we're thinking banking. So got to keep an open mind when we get into all of this. All right. So the grocery store example. Again, this is an example that I thought made it really clear to understand being a good business owner. And that's really what you are when you're starting your own bank. You're going into business for yourself. You're starting a business and the business is banking. And so this teaches you that you have to treat your business like you would treat someone else's business. I wouldn't go into another business and just steal from that business. So I probably shouldn't go into my business and steal from my own business. So he talks about that as we go through this. But Liz, you want to start us off? What are some things? Because I've got quite a few things highlighted
Yeah,
in this as well, but I'm sure that you're going to touch on a lot of the things that I have.
for sure. I think reading through this the full time, and I know it sounds obvious. When I first read this the first couple times, I was reading it as, okay, Nelson's telling me about the grocery store example and how this business works. But I feel like the way he is presenting it, it's meant to be an analogy that you're tying directly to baking. It yeah,
Definitely.
and I just missed that point, and it clicked aha moment for me when I read it, like, the 4th time, which I find funny because it seems obvious now that I have realized that is the point of the grocery store
Yeah.
example.
Again, as you go through this and you learn more about banking and you start to utilize it in your life, there'll be things that you've read over that you understood, but you didn't understand them in the way that they were intended to
Mhm.
be understood. So I'm right there with you. You're like, oh, I get it. And then he's, oh no, but we're talking about banking. You're like, oh, okay. Now I get it that I've used my banking
Mhm.
policy, that I've read this multiple times and this stands out as obvious to me, but it wasn't obvious
Yeah,
before. I thought you were just telling me about this grocery store example.
absolutely, and he really highlights about how necessary it is to fully understand the business that you're getting into.
Mhm.
Any business, whether it's the grocery store business or the banking business, which is why we're reading this book.
Yeah. And I think he mentions here right at the beginning, he says, I would like you to examine the process of getting into a business in which you are both the consumer and a seller of the same thing. And so that's really what the banking process is. You're using your money, but you're also essentially running the show on the outside. So you're taking loans from the bank and you're the bank giving the loans. So he just happened to say that this grocery store example is the prime example, but you could tie this to a lot of different things. Um, not sure if that jet's still going off in the background. Do you like live at the airport? What are we doing here?
I'm
Where you like,
muting
cause I know PDX airport
close there,
right there,
yeah. And there's a little airport,
the little airstrip.
yeah, right
Hmm.
there in downtown Vancouver, and I'm like by the fort. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. So again, I don't know if you guys can pick this up in the background. I
I'm
don't know
muting,
if
I'm sorry.
my stuff will cut it out, and maybe it will. If it doesn't, screw it. Who cares? It's what you get. But all right. So where do you want to start at with this
I
example?
really wanted to also remind the audience that banking happens no matter what, and I'm pretty sure I said that
Hmm.
last time, but it's a matter of the whole idea of infinite banking is to control the banking function in your life. And since it's happening anyways, you should know about how to control it. And that's like, period, hard stop. It's all about control.
Yeah, this is going to happen with or without you. It's already happening. Just like the world goes on with or without you, banks are going to go on with or without you. Whether you know it or not, he mentioned this in the book, you're already taking part in infinite banking. It's just being done to you. So if we can teach you how to take control of that portion of your life, then you're going to have a whole lot more opportunities that come your way. So go ahead and hop into it.
I think the part that really stood out to me was he's talking about human tendency, the natural urge. If you're being honest with yourself, if you owned a grocery store, would you take the peas out the front door or would you take the peas to the back door? Would your wife take the peas out the back door? Would your friends and family feel entitled somehow to take these peas out the back door versus pay retail prices for them? And I think honestly, everybody would do that. I think if you ask any business owner, any retail business owner, theft
Hmm.
is a huge crippling thing for these businesses.
Yeah. I used to own a clothing line and I would give product away to friends and family at discounted prices, at cost, whatever it might have been. I would take product myself without paying for it from my business. And you quickly start to realize once you read this, that is a good way to implode your business. So before we go further with that, I want to back up and I want to go to I guess the second paragraph. It starts, he says, you started all by studying what the grocery store business is all about, all the things that are necessary to be successful as an entrepreneur in this field. This is going to take you some time and expense. When you feel confident to start the venture, you must now find a good location for the business. The real estate folks say that there are three important things about real estate: location. So I think what he's setting you up for here is understanding that, listen, these things take time. Research. He says right there, you're going to want to study what the grocery store business is all about. He doesn't say you just want to trust your job and say, or your cousin or your uncle, and they say, you know what, start a grocery store business. It's guaranteed
Mm,
to be successful. That's what everybody else is starting grocery store business. Just start a grocery store business. No, he says, go and do the
mhm.
research. Make sure that you have a good understanding of how the grocery store business functions, how it works. And then this is going to take time and money because you are starting yourself a business, and you have to think about that the same way with your infinite banking policy. This is not, just think about a general bank in the first place. No bank opens their door the first day and just, I wanted to be a bank last week. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start a bank. And so come Monday, I'm a bank now, and I have a bunch of customers and everything's going great and we're making a bunch of money and everybody wants to come and deposit their money into my bank. That's not how it
No.
works. There's a whole long process to get yourself even to break even before you get into the black and you start making money as a business, as a bank. It doesn't really matter. So he's letting you know, hey, this is going to take time. It's going to take money, but if done correctly, it'll be a vehicle that'll provide you with everything that you need come retirement time. Now, we're looking before retirement time, but I thought that was super important.
Yeah, I
Um,
think in that paragraph too, he's talking about location. And again, like reading through the fourth time, I was like, oh, he's literally drawing parallels to infinite banking. And I believe when he's speaking here, he's talking about the vehicle in which you use infinite banking for. So the more you learn about banking, you're discovering what is the asset or the vehicle that's going to be the best location to do this business.
you had to warehouse your money. Yeah. And I think that later in the book, he talks about other vehicles that you could use to do infinite banking, because remember, infinite banking is just a
Mhm.
concept. Participating whole life is the best platform that it seems to work on, but he shows you how this can be done with a CD, how this can be done with a savings account, all things that we'll get to later in the book. But yeah, I think you're right. He's just foreshadowing like, hey, where you're warehousing this wealth is very important. Let's make sure that you are putting it in the right
Mhm.
place to take most advantage of the benefits of the vehicle.
Yeah, this whole grocery store example is priming the pump and just planting seeds for you to have them sprout later in your brain and go, oh, okay. I smell what you're stepping
Yep.
in, Nelson. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think the next paragraph says, then you must construct a very nice looking building on the property. It must have well arranged interior with attractive equipment and fixtures and display cases. All this is necessary because your competition is hard at work for years in attracting customers, has been hard at work for years attracting customers, are going to do business with stores that are convenient, that look good, that have quality merchandise and low prices. So I want to get your viewpoint on what you think he's talking about there, because I have in my mind what I think he's talking about and how he's relating that to infinite banking, unless you want me to start first with mine.
Go for it.
So when I read that, and again, I definitely didn't get this the first time, probably not the second time either, but the third or the fourth time I reviewed this, that really came to me as the company that you're choosing to go with. So all of these companies are in competition with each other and trying to be the best for their policyholders. So everybody's in competition. This is a business on their end as well. So they want to make sure that they are doing what's best for the consumer. They want to make this process as easy as possible, as appealing as possible, as you want your banking policy to be easy to use. And that's why we talk about sometimes you got to be careful with who you're going
Mhm.
with, because some companies are much more into the idea of you utilizing your participating whole life policy as an infinite banking vehicle compared to some other companies that may not totally be down with it because of the back end work that goes in on their side, as the company, as the agents, as all those people behind the scenes
Mhm.
that are going to have to take the loans, that are going to have to do all of this extra work. So I think really finding the right company. I'm not saying that there's huge differences out there on the dividends or on the death benefit you may get or on the scrutiny behind the underwriting. All of those things are pretty similar in general. but it's, hey, are you finding the company that wants you, that likes the fact that you want to partake in infinite banking? And if you are, I think, I essentially think that's what he's hinting at there.
Absolutely, and it ties into, again, like, it is necessary to study the business and know what it's all about, and that includes working with people who understand banking, because there are companies that really see the value in infinite banking, and that's why they make it attractive for the customers to participate in these policies. And then there's other
Yep.
companies that maybe lack a knowledge or don't fully understand the banking business and the value that it brings, and that's why you might not want to participate with them.
Yeah. And just like in the last episode that we did, he talks about people at the home base, people at the company themselves. Not a lot of them are extremely knowledgeable or educated about infinite banking. Now, companies we work with, because this is something that they don't essentially promote, but when we put on events like this one that we're going to in Nashville here in a couple days, there will be people from the companies that we write with at this event because they love infinite banking. So you better believe when you call in and you're talking to these people that are on the other line that work at the company about infinite banking, they're going to know what you're talking about. They're going to know how, as far as utilizing your policy goes. Now, they're not nearly going to know as much as us, the agents that are helping you through the process. But if you say infinite banking, they're not going to be like, well, what are you talking about? I've never heard that phrase
Yeah,
before. They know what you're talking about. That's not every company. So it's very important to understand who you're going with. And that's where an agent plays a pretty decent role in that decision.
definitely. It's important who you go to.
So what else you got? Because I'm going to want to get back to the point you made at the beginning about going out the front door, going out the back door, all of that stuff.
Yeah, I think this is interesting too. He does make a point. Let's see. Do we want to touch on how many times over you would have to sell a can of peas if something went out the back door? If a can of peas went out the back door?
Yeah, if we could touch on that because again, stealing from yourself is only a hindrance to the overall.
Efficiency
Uh,
of the machine.
I think that's a good point to touch on.
Absolutely. He says basically, if you bring a can of peas outside the back door at warehouse price, or you're stealing from it, you got to sell that same can of peas 15 times over just to break even. And he talks down in the very last paragraph the phenomenon in physics where if you take a pail of water and you heat it to 210 degrees Fahrenheit, it's just really hot water. That's 210 degrees that water has to travel. And then once it hits 200 degrees, it's boiling, it's powering steam engines, and it's like full force. And so
Yeah.
you really got to thinking about it in that way. You got to travel 210 degrees with your banking policy. And then once it reaches that tipping point, the 2 degrees, it's like full power ahead. And if you're stealing from yourself, it's going to take a long time to get to 210 degrees.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to relate those two things together. Didn't really put those together like that. I think one of the really important points that he talks on is he says grocery stores operate on very small margin on such items. So I think that is a common misconception with whole life as well. I think people are like, man, whole life is so expensive. That's what everybody thinks. This is the most expensive product out there. Does it have to be whole life? Blah, blah, blah. When in all reality, Jonah and Jadu always say, compared to what? It's expensive compared to what? Is it expensive compared to renting? Let's say the house comparison. If I was renting a home
Mhm.
over the period of a short period of time, sure, maybe I paid less because I paid a lump sum up front for my home. So I paid 300,000 and you're paying 1,500 a month or whatever for your rent. But ownership versus renting. I'm building equity. I'm creating something of value here. You, on the other hand, are essentially just throwing money away. You're wasting money because it's not doing anything for you. That's not building any value for you. So people are always like, term is so much cheaper. Yeah. But that's because the company never pays out the policy. 98 to 99% of people don't pass away with inside their term
Mhm.
window. So the company's, oh, thank you. Yeah, sure. We'll charge you less because we know there's a very limited chance that we're going to be paying this out to you.
Mhm.
So
Yep, they have
I
all
think,
the people sorry to cut you off, but
no,
it's
you're good.
down to a science. They know when we're gonna die.
Yeah. They're pretty good. They got some really smart people on
Yes.
the back end, actuarial people that are doing that math behind the scenes. In all reality, whole life is more expensive to the insurance company because they know, God, if this person just keeps paying, which they want you to do, we're going to pay them out a big old juicy death benefit at the end when they do pass away. And it's guaranteed to happen. Like they know you
Yep,
pay, we pay.
absolutely.
So you got to understand the value in what you're purchasing,
Absolutely.
building equity, all of that stuff.
That's exact I was gonna relate it to the value. Yeah, compared I love the question compared to what, but really it's compared to term, what kind of value are you getting there? And it's expensive because it's a banking system. You're depositing money into your bank and it's begs the question, how much money do you want in your banking system? I want all of my money. I want all of the money in my banking
Yeah.
system. And so it's a huge mindset set shift, I think, for people to realize it's not a payment, it's a deposit.
Yeah, and I think a good way to look at it when people are comparing the two, it's like, all right, so some companies out there that offer term offer return of premium on your term. So if you were to look at what the cost of that super cheap term is to get that amount of death benefit you're looking for, where you don't get anything back at the end of your term period, there's that number. Then if you say, all right, what does it cost to get all of my money back at the end of that, we'll say 30-year period. All right, that cost is going to drastically increase. And I know these things because, again, I used to sell this stuff all the time. That cost will drastically increase because the insurance company now knows, oh, I'm giving this person all of their money back. Not any extra, just everything that they paid me. If they outlive their term, I'm giving it back to them. So that's going to cost them, as the client, much more money. And then you get to us with whole life. And we're basically saying, hey, you know what? I can guarantee you that not only will you get every single dollar back that you put into this thing at some point, it'll be much sooner than that 30-year period for sure.
Mhm,
You're talking about 8, 10 years, depending on how your policy is set up.
mhm,
But you're going to get growth, and that growth is going to become massive growth. So again, compared to what we really need to look at, what are we comparing this to? You're saying it's cheaper to get this when in all reality, you're never going to see another penny of that back again. We're saying it's more beneficial to get this and you get every dollar back plus some. So there's really no comparison when you
mhm.
understand what's going on. People are just used to what everybody else is telling them with the buy term investor. This is way too expensive. This is a bad investment. All of this stuff. When at the end of the day, again, whole life insurance is a bad investment because we're not investing in shit.
Absolutely. And it
So,
has to be specially designed because whole life
yep,
insurance traditionally used, it is a bad place to put your money because it's not designed for cash value up front, which is why it's important to work with an agent that understands how to design these policies for you depending on what you
yep,
want to do with it. And it's all uniquely decided based on your goals and where you're at.
yep. Definitely agree. So let's flip to the next page. Six. I think we'll end it on this page and then we'll jump into the next chapter on the next episode because we're at a good 30-minute mark or so here. So I have this highlighted at the top. He says, thus far, the business looks pretty simple, but now we complicate the picture. So this is what you were talking about
Mm.
earlier. Assuming that you are a male, married with children, where is your wife going to shop for groceries? Your store or somewhere else? Further assuming that she chooses correctly your store, she comes into the front door and fills her cart with groceries. Here comes the complicated part. Please pay close attention. This point is critical and requires scrupulous honesty. Out of which door is she likely to take the groceries? Front or back? Now, again, we mentioned this earlier. I think most people would say, I own the store. I'm not paying for my groceries. My wife is not paying for our groceries. What's the whole point of the grocery store? I want to get free groceries. And Nelson is saying, So, really quickly, he says, when delivering lectures, I ask this question and wait for answers. An amazing number will readily admit that, in all probability, she wants to go out the back door, avoiding the cashier at the front door. This is a very polite description of theft.
Uh,
You are stealing from
yeah.
you. I know it's really hard to understand that because, again, I was a business owner
Mhm.
before. I gave stuff to people for discounted prices. I gave them stuff at cost. I took a lot of my own merchandise and wore it and used it myself, not thinking that I was actually stealing from myself. When in all reality, if I wanted my business to be successful, as successful as it could be, I would be charging myself what I was charging everyone else, if not a little bit more. And same thing for the people in my close knit circle. So,
Yeah, it reminds me of you're a fit guy. I'm tying it to like counting calories or macros. It's all a math equation. And so it's you're working hard in the gym, you're on your diet 5 days a week, 6 days a week. And then if every week you're having a major caloric increase, you're only cheating yourself. And those choices, those numbers of the shirt going out the back door or the can of peas or the pizza you're eating, all of that hinders and compounds either negatively or positively towards whatever goal it might be for you.
definitely. And I don't think they're saying here, hey, we don't want you to live your life.
Right.
We want you to live your life. We want you to live it to the best of your abilities. We just want to make sure that you're doing it in a way that's going to create longevity and success for your business and for your retirement and all of this stuff. Because I don't know if I have this highlighted in here, but he talks about, and maybe you do, but he talks about the difference between you not doing this, another business owner doing it, meaning they're taking stuff out the back door and whatnot, what their books may or may not look like. And when it comes time to sell their business, who is going to get the most money for their hard work that they put in building their grocery store and doing all the hard stuff that they need to do so that they may live the ideal retirement that they want to live at whatever age that might
Right,
be.
yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you can guarantee yourself that a lot of people out there that have businesses are doing just that. They're going out the back door. They're fudging the numbers to make them look a little bit more appealing because they have to cover the cost of doing these things that I was doing, taking my own product, giving it out to people for a little bit less than I should. And so when that time comes where you're like, hey, I'm ready to cash out, ready to get all this money that
Mm.
I should get for my retirement, and you have to present your information to people to make sure that your books are good and everything stacks up, somebody's shit's going to have holes in it. And if you're practicing being a good banker, yours will not. Same thing goes with your policy. If you do all of the things that you're supposed to do, just like you wouldn't cheat another bank, there's no way that you could cheat another bank. Treat your business, your bank, like you would treat someone else's bank, and you're going to make a whole lot of money.
Absolutely. He says here, unless this misunderstanding is curbed, the business is doomed. And that is the privilege of, or the belief of having the privilege or a right to take the piece. It's my business. I already bought them.
Yep. Yeah, it's a hard mindset shift because that's like it's essentially loaning money from yourself. You're like, why would I pay myself back interest to loan my own money? Great question. What you're not realizing is you're not loaning your money. You're using OPM, other people's money. So in all reality, your money sits over here, still continuously compounding for you. But if you want to take out your money, you can do that. You can withdraw your money, then you don't have to pay interest on that. But it's not what banking is about. So it's really just shifting that mindset of like, all right, like, I guess I'm not paying interest on loaning my own money. I'm paying interest on loaning someone else's money. So it makes sense to pay interest back to myself. Luckily, in your position, when you owe the bank, that interest that you're paying back, that extra interest that you should be paying back, that you would be paying to a bank, you get to pay to yourself. And that's only going to increase everything, your death benefit, your cash value, your dividends that you're going to receive, all of that stuff. So you got options. If you want to keep doing it the old way and giving away that money, all of that interest that you're being charged, you can definitely do that. But if you want to recapture a good portion of that and just grow this massive bank that you could then go and do a lot of things with, all your investments, all
Mhm.
of those type of things, you're going to have a little bit of discipline.
Well, it goes back to what you were saying about in our presentation. If you guys haven't watched it, be sure to watch it. Shawn's presentation is great, talking about how banks make 500% on our 4%. And I think that is the importance of paying yourself interest, because being a banker, being in the business of banking, you want to capitalize on the interest. Also, there is two interests going at play when you do borrow other people's money, right? You're paying yourself back with
Hmm.
interest. However, you also pay interest on the money that you loan against your policy back to the insurance company. And a lot of people have an issue with that, which I'm not really sure why, because we all pay interest all the time and it's minimal. It's 4, 5, 8%. But even no matter what the number is, if you understand you're paying the interest back on your loan to the insurance company, and they are the trustee of the players in the world, right? And so we're
Hmm.
participating with them, and us paying interest back to them, that is more money in the pool for dividends to come back, because they're making money
Yep.
on the money that we give them anyways. And that's just like
Yeah.
cycling it through.
Remember, you are a owner of this business. You're in the banking business. Your policy to the company, you are an
Mhm.
owner. So you paying interest to them. When you pay interest to a bank, let's say you have your credit card and you're paying interest back to, does that interest that you're paying benefit the company, the bank? Does that benefit the bank, the interest that you're paying them?
Yes.
Yes, it does. Does it benefit you in any way?
Not
No,
really.
it doesn't.
No.
Because I'm not involved. I'm not in business with the bank.
Right.
I'm a consumer. I am a customer of the bank.
Absolutely.
When you're in business with the life insurance company, you are partial owner of the life insurance company. So the interest that they're charging you, you want them to charge you interest, because when you pay that interest, that makes their books look even better, which when their books look better, you get a larger dividend.
Mhm.
So in all reality, okay, you're paying yourself interest. You were going to pay somebody interest. You're paying the life insurance company interest. You were going to be paying that to somebody. You pay it to your local Chase Bank if you were going through them. But Chase Bank doesn't benefit you. Your life insurance company paying them interest does benefit you.
Yep.
You're paying yourself to get bigger returns, bigger dividends. So it's all about how you think about
Yep.
things, just rethinking your thinking. And when we lay this all out, it's so much easier to understand. And we don't expect you to get it right away. It's going to take a little bit of time.
Absolutely.
But once you realize it, you're like, holy shit,
Yes.
this is
That
crazy.
was a huge aha moment for me when I really realized, like, okay, I'm in business with this life insurance company, and my interest to them is cycling through and it's generating the company money. It's guaranteeing me dividends, and it's guaranteeing my family a future payout on my death benefit.
Yeah. What does your bank account do? None of these other things do anything extra for you. So a lot of good value there. Anything else on that chapter that you want to discuss before we wrap this up?
No, I just recommend getting the book. There's huge value every sentence. We can go through each and every paragraph here and get the book, read the book, but every quarter, every 6 months.
Yeah. Again, if you want to be successful, if you want to have more control over the banking function in your life, if you want to stop sending out so much interest to third parties, not yourself, this is for you. If you like the position you're in, if you like not having control, if you like giving away a bunch of money and doing all this stuff, then infinite banking is not for you. So again, at the end of the day, it's all up to you.
Mhm.
But we appreciate y'all. That's a wrap for today's episode. We appreciate you tuning in to learn and grow with us today. Hopefully, our discussions shed some light on the concept of infinite banking and brought you a little bit more clarity on how it might be able to impact you and your life. If you'd like to check out the full overview, like I mentioned before, I'll link that video right around here somewhere. And if you'd like to chat about how infinite banking could fit in your life, don't hesitate to head down to the description below and book yourself a free cash consultation today so we can get all those questions answered that you might have. Liz, I won't forget this time. How can people find and follow you?
I'm across the platforms. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, getting the YouTube channel together now. And that is liz.durock at, yeah, I'm not going to give you my email address, but yeah, liz.durock.
Cool. Awesome. Again, appreciate you guys. As always, the information is free, but the knowledge is priceless. Peace, y'all.